Dating as a single father was complicated enough without being worth $200 million. Lucas Bennett had learned the hard way that mentioning his position as CEO of Bennett Technologies on first dates led to relationships with his bank account rather than his heart. As a successful black entrepreneur who had built his empire from nothing, he'd faced enough assumptions and judgments throughout his life to know that people's motivations weren't always pure, especially when substantial wealth was involved. The tech industry hadn't been kind to him in the early days. Fresh out of MIT with a computer science degree and a head full of dreams, Lucas had watched venture capitalists pass over his innovative software solutions while funding less promising ventures led by men who looked nothing like him. But determination and brilliance had a way of breaking through barriers, and when his revolutionary cybersecurity platform prevented a major corporate hack, the industry finally took notice. Now, at 32, Bennett Technologies was a household name, and Lucas Bennett was frequently featured on magazine covers as one of the youngest black CEOs in Silicon Valley. But success had come with unexpected challenges, particularly in his personal life. After his ex-wife Melissa had left when the twins were barely 2 years old, claiming she couldn't handle the pressure of his growing business and the demands of motherhood, Lucas had thrown himself into both his company and his role as a single father. Melissa had been awarded generous visitation rights, but she rarely used them, preferring her new life in Los Angeles with a struggling actor who appreciated her trust fund more than her parenting skills. So when his sister Carmen convinced him to meet her friend's colleague, Sophia, he decided to try a radically different approach. Carmen had been pestering him for months about his dating life, or rather, his complete lack thereof. "Lucas, you can't just work and take care of Emma and Lily forever," Carmen had argued during their weekly Sunday dinner at his estate. "You're 32, successful, handsome, and an amazing father. Any woman would be lucky to have you." "Any woman who wants my money, you mean?" Lucas had replied, cutting up chicken nuggets for his daughters while they chattered about their week at preschool. "Not every woman is like that," Carmen had insisted. "My friend Maria has this colleague, Sofia Martinez. She's a marketing director for a nonprofit that provides computer training to low-income families. Maria says she's brilliant, kind, and completely dedicated to her work. She's not the type to be impressed by flashy wealth." Lucas had remained skeptical, but Carmen's persistence eventually wore him down. However, he'd made one condition. He would meet Sophia without revealing his true financial status. If she was genuinely the woman Carmen claimed she was, then she would appreciate Lucas Bennett, the father and the man, not Lucas Bennett, the millionaire CEO. Now, as he prepared for their first meeting, Lucas felt nervous in a way he hadn't experienced since his early days pitching to investors. He'd chosen Rosewood Cafe, a modest neighborhood restaurant in a middle-class area far from the upscale establishments where he might be recognized. His usual tailored suits remained in the closet, replaced by his most casual white shirt and a pair of jeans he'd owned since graduate school. The expensive Patek Philippe watch that usually adorned his wrist stayed in its velvet box, replaced by a simple digital watch he'd bought at a drugstore specifically for this deception. "Girls, remember what we talked about?" Lucas whispered to his 4-year-old twins, Emma and Lily, as they approached the corner table at Rosewood Cafe. The morning sun streaming through the windows caught the warm brown of his skin and highlighted the gentle worry lines around his dark eyes. "Today, Daddy is just Lucas, who works with computers, not the boss of a big company," Emma replied in a whisper, clutching her pink stuffed rabbit. Her hair was styled in 2 neat braids with colorful beads that clicked softly when she moved her head. "And we live in the little apartment, not the big house," Lily added, though she looked confused about why they needed to pretend about their beautiful home with its swimming pool and the treehouse Lucas had built himself. "That's right, sweethearts," Lucas confirmed, though he felt a stab of guilt about involving his daughters in even this innocent deception. Both girls had inherited his warm brown skin and intelligent dark eyes, though Emma had also gotten his thick, naturally curly hair, while Lily's was straighter and easier to manage. They were beautiful, brilliant children who deserved honesty in all aspects of their lives. But Lucas hoped this one small lie would ultimately protect them from people who might try to use them to get close to their father's wealth. The woman rising from the corner booth was even more beautiful than Carmen had described. Sofia Martinez appeared to be in her late 20s with flowing dark hair that caught golden highlights in the sunlight and warm hazel eyes that seemed to take in everything with genuine interest. Her elegant mint green dress was paired with a cream-colored cardigan and simple jewelry that spoke of good taste without ostentation. She looked professional and sophisticated, exactly the kind of woman who usually lost interest the moment she realized he came with 2 small children and a schedule that revolved around preschool pickup times and bedtime stories. "You must be Lucas," Sophia said with a warm smile that immediately put him at ease. Her voice carried the slightest trace of a Spanish accent, musical and welcoming. "And these must be the famous Emma and Lily I've heard so much about." Lucas was surprised by how naturally she addressed his daughters, immediately kneeling down to their eye level instead of offering the awkward adults-only greeting he usually encountered from his dates. Most women seem to view children as obstacles to overcome or ignore, but Sophia's attention was focused entirely on Emma and Lily. "I'm Emma," announced the twin in the pink dress, holding up her stuffed animal with the confidence of a child who had never doubted she was worthy of attention. "This is Bunny, and that's Lily. Lily's my sister, but we're not identical twins because we have different personalities." "Hello, Emma and Bunny," Sophia replied with complete seriousness, as if she regularly held conversations with stuffed animals. "And hello, Lily. I'm very excited to meet all 3 of you. Carmen told me you both love books and that you're very smart." Lily, typically shyer than her sister, smiled and nodded. "Daddy reads to us every night," she said proudly. "Last night we read about a dragon who was scared of mice." "That sounds like a wonderful story," Sophia said as they settled into the booth. "I love books about dragons. Did the dragon learn to be brave?" As the girls launched into an animated retelling of the story, Lucas found himself watching Sophia's face carefully. Her interest seemed genuine, not the forced patience he'd encountered from other women who were clearly just tolerating his children to get to him. She asked follow-up questions, laughed at the funny parts, and even offered suggestions for other dragon books they might enjoy. "So, Lucas," Sophia said once the girls became absorbed in their coloring books and the children's menu activities the server had brought over, "Carmen mentioned you work in technology. What do you do?" "Computer programming, mostly," Lucas replied, which was technically true since he had started Bennett Technologies by coding software applications in his MIT dorm room. "It pays the bills, but it's not the most exciting work in the world." This was perhaps the most difficult part of his deception. Lucas genuinely loved his work and was proud of what he'd built, but he needed to downplay his success and passion to maintain his cover story. "I think technology is fascinating," Sophia said with obvious enthusiasm. "I work in marketing for a nonprofit called Digital Bridge that provides computer training to low-income families. We're always looking for volunteers who can help with basic programming instruction. The digital divide is such a serious issue, especially in communities of color where access to technology education can be limited by both economic barriers and historical inequities in educational funding." Lucas felt a sharp pang of guilt about his deception. Here was someone whose work aligned perfectly with his company's charitable foundation initiatives, and he was lying about his role in an industry she clearly cared deeply about. Bennett Technologies had donated millions to organizations like hers, and he personally mentored young black programmers through several scholarship programs. But revealing that information would blow his cover completely. "That sounds like incredibly meaningful work," Lucas said honestly, his voice carrying the genuine admiration he felt for her dedication. "It must be rewarding to help people gain new skills that can change their economic prospects." "It is," Sophia replied, her hazel eyes lighting up with passion. "Technology can be such a powerful tool for economic mobility, but only if people have access to training and equipment. We work with single mothers, veterans, recent immigrants, formerly incarcerated individuals, people who face additional barriers to traditional education and employment. When someone completes our program and gets their first job in tech, even if it's just basic data entry or customer support, it can completely transform their family's trajectory." As she spoke about her work, Lucas found himself falling for more than just her beauty. Her dedication reminded him of his own mother, who had worked 2 jobs to put him through school and had never let him forget the importance of lifting others up as he climbed. His mother, Patricia Bennett, had passed away from cancer 3 years earlier, but not before she'd seen him become successful enough to pay off her mortgage and ensure she could retire comfortably. She would have loved Sophia's commitment to helping others. "Do you enjoy the marketing side of the work?" Lucas asked, genuinely curious about her perspective. "I love it because it's not just about promoting our programs. It's about changing perceptions," Sophia explained, unconsciously smoothing Lily's hair as the little girl leaned against her while coloring. "A lot of people think technology jobs are only for people who've been coding since childhood or who have computer science degrees from prestigious universities. But some of our most successful graduates are people who never touched a computer before age 40. We have to convince both the students and the employers that talent and determination matter more than traditional credentials. Lucas nodded, thinking about his own journey and the assumptions people had made about him throughout his career. That's probably especially challenging when you're working with communities that have faced systemic barriers in education and employment. Exactly, Sophia said, clearly pleased that he understood the complexity of her work. There's often internalized doubt to overcome, plus very real external biases. But when you see someone realize they can learn this stuff, that they can compete in this industry, it's incredible. Last month, one of our graduates got hired as a junior developer at a startup. 6 months ago, she was working 2 minimum wage jobs and worried about paying rent. Now she's making enough to buy a house. The pride in Sophia's voice was unmistakable, and Lucas felt his attraction to her deepening. This was a woman who understood the power of technology to change lives, who saw beyond the surface to recognize potential in people others might overlook. It reminded him of why he'd started his company in the first place, not just to make money, but to create solutions that could make a real difference. As lunch progressed, Lucas found himself genuinely drawn to Sophia's passion for her work, her easy rapport with his daughters, and her apparent lack of interest in material displays of wealth. She admired Emma's careful coloring technique rather than commenting on the quality of his shirt, asked thoughtful questions about balancing work and parenting rather than probing about his income level, and seemed genuinely content with the simple pleasure of good conversation and the girls' company. "Daddy makes the best pancakes," Emma announced suddenly, looking up from her coloring with a purple crayon in her hand. "They're shaped like animals, and he does funny voices for each one." "That sounds amazing," Sophia said with genuine delight. "What's your favorite animal pancake?" "Elephants," both girls said simultaneously, then dissolved into giggles. "Daddy makes the elephant say, 'I'm too big for this plate,'" Lily added, demonstrating with a deep, pompous voice that made Sophia laugh. "Your daddy sounds very creative," Sophia said, catching Lucas's eye with a warm smile. "I bet breakfast at your house is never boring." Lucas felt his chest tighten with emotion. Most of the women he'd dated had seemed to view his devotion to his daughters as either an inconvenience or, worse, as evidence that he was too involved in parenting. But Sophia seemed to see his relationship with Emma and Lily as one of his most attractive qualities. When the server brought their food, simple sandwiches and salads that Lucas had chosen specifically for their modest price point, the conversation continued to flow naturally. Sophia helped Lily cut her sandwich into manageable pieces, listened patiently to Emma's elaborate explanation of why ketchup was the best condiment in the world, and shared stories about her own childhood growing up as the youngest of 5 children in a boisterous Mexican-American family in San Antonio. "My brothers used to tease me mercilessly," Sophia said, stealing a French fry from Emma's plate with mock stealth that made the little girl giggle. "They called me La Raton de Biblioteca, the library mouse, because I always had my nose in a book. But my parents encouraged my reading, even when money was tight. My father worked construction, and my mother cleaned houses, but they made sure all 5 of us kids had library cards and understood that education was our path to better opportunities." "Did all your siblings go to college?" Lucas asked, thinking about his own family's emphasis on education despite financial struggles. 4 out of 5, Sophia said with a mix of pride and sadness. "My oldest brother Miguel struggled with addiction for years, but he's been clean for 18 months now and just started community college. My parents never gave up on him, and neither did the rest of us. Family means you don't get left behind, no matter how many times you stumble." The conviction in her voice reminded Lucas of his own family's values, and he found himself sharing more than he'd planned about his upbringing in Detroit, though he carefully edited out details about his current wealth. "My mom was a nurse, and she worked incredibly hard to make sure I had opportunities she never had," Lucas said, bouncing Lily absently on his knee as the little girl had climbed over to his side of the booth. "She used to say that success without purpose was just expensive emptiness. I think about that a lot when I'm making decisions about work and life balance." "She sounds like a wise woman," Sophia said softly. "Is she still in Detroit?" Lucas felt the familiar ache of loss. "She passed away 3 years ago. Cancer. But she got to meet these 2 troublemakers before she died, and she spoiled them absolutely rotten." He squeezed Emma's hand as she looked up at him with concern, recognizing the sadness in his voice even if she didn't fully understand the conversation. "I'm so sorry for your loss," Sophia said with genuine sympathy. "But what a gift that she got to be a grandmother, even if it was too brief. I can tell from how you talk about her that she raised an incredible son." The sincerity in her voice nearly undid him. Lucas had to look away for a moment, overwhelmed by the combination of grief for his mother and growing feelings for this remarkable woman who seemed to understand instinctively what mattered most to him. When the check arrived, Lucas made a show of checking his wallet with carefully practiced concern, a performance he'd rehearsed for this exact scenario. He pulled out his wallet, a worn leather one he'd bought specifically for this deception, not the designer one that usually held his platinum credit cards, and frowned as he counted the bills inside. "Is everything okay?" Sophia asked, noticing his expression. "I'm so embarrassed," Lucas said, trying to look authentically worried while hating himself for the lie. "I thought I had enough cash for lunch, but I seem to be about $20 short. I can call my bank and see about getting my debit card unlocked. There was some suspicious activity on my account yesterday, but it might take a while to sort out." He watched Sophia's face carefully, wondering if this would be the moment when her polite interest turned to judgment or disappointment. This was the real test, he thought. Would she offer to help, or would she suddenly remember an urgent appointment that required her immediate departure? Instead, Sophia reached for her purse without the slightest hesitation, her movement so natural and immediate that it was clear she hadn't even considered any other response. "Don't worry about it," she said easily, pulling out her wallet. "Lunch is on me today." "I can't let you pay for our first date," Lucas protested, though he felt his heart warming at her immediate generosity and the way she'd called it their first date, implying there would be others. "Why not?" Sophia asked with a smile that lit up her entire face. "Lucas, you're a single father raising two beautiful daughters while working to support them. The least I can do is buy lunch for people I'm enjoying spending time with. Besides," she added with a playful wink at the girls, "Emma and Lily are excellent company, and good company is always worth the investment." "But this was supposed to be my treat," Lucas insisted, genuinely moved by her kindness and the way she'd included his daughters in her reasoning. "There will be other treats," Sophia said confidently, then caught herself and blushed slightly. "I mean, if you want there to be other treats, I would very much like to see you again. All three of you." Lucas felt something fundamental shift in his chest. Most of the women he'd dated were either put off by his children or saw them as obstacles to overcome on the path to a relationship with him. A few had been calculating enough to pretend to like Emma and Lily while clearly viewing them as inconvenient complications to his eligibility as a partner. But Sophia seemed to view the girls as integral parts of getting to know him, not barriers to romance, but rather essential elements of who he was as a person. "I would like that very much too," Lucas said, meaning it completely. After lunch, they walked to a nearby playground where Emma and Lily could burn off some energy. Lucas watched as Sophia pushed the girls on swings, helped them navigate the monkey bars, and even joined them at the bottom of the slide, laughing as her carefully styled hair became mussed and her elegant dress collected wood chips from the playground surface. "Higher, Miss Sophia," Emma called from her swing, pumping her legs with determined enthusiasm. "Careful, sweetheart," Lucas called automatically. But Sophia was already adjusting her push to give Emma the height she wanted while keeping her safe. "I have 4 nieces and nephews," Sophia explained, catching his concerned look. "I know the difference between adventurous and dangerous." As they sat on a bench watching the girls play, Lucas found himself studying Sophia's profile, memorizing the curve of her smile and the way she unconsciously tucked her hair behind her ear when the wind blew it across her face. "Thank you," he said suddenly. "For what?" "For seeing them," Lucas said, nodding toward his daughters. "For treating them like they matter, not like they're just accessories to dating me." Sophia turned to look at him directly, her expression serious. "Lucas, they're not just part of your life. They're the best part of your life. Anyone who can't see that doesn't deserve to be in it." The simple truth of her statement hit him like a physical force. This was what he'd been looking for without even realizing it. Someone who understood that Emma and Lily weren't complications to be managed, but rather the center of his universe, the motivation for everything he did. Over the following weeks, Lucas continued his deception while falling genuinely in love with a woman who packed picnic lunches instead of expecting expensive dinners, who brought new books for the girls instead of flowers for him, and who never once asked about his living situation, his car, or his financial prospects. Their second date was a trip to the zoo, where Sophia proved to be as enthusiastic about the penguin exhibit as Emma and Lily were. Their third was a cooking lesson at Sophia's modest apartment, where she taught them all how to make homemade tortillas while sharing stories about her grandmother's recipes. Lucas found himself looking forward to their time together with an anticipation he hadn't felt since his early days building his company. Sophia brought out a lighter side of his personality that had been buried under years of corporate responsibility and single-parenting stress. She laughed at his terrible jokes, encouraged his silly voices during story time, and somehow made even mundane activities like grocery shopping feel like adventures when the four of them went together. But the deception was taking its toll. Every lie he told felt like a betrayal of the trust Sophia was showing him, and he found himself editing more and more of his life to maintain his cover story. When she mentioned struggling to fund a new computer lab for Digital Bridge, he had to bite his tongue to keep from offering to write a check that would solve their problems immediately. When she worried about affording a new laptop for her work presentations, he couldn't offer to buy her the best equipment available. Most painfully, when she shared her dreams of expanding their programs to serve more communities, he couldn't tell her about the foundation he'd established specifically to support organizations like hers. The weight of his lies became especially heavy when Sophia began including him in her work life. She invited him to volunteer at a Digital Bridge workshop, where he had to pretend to be less skilled at programming than he actually was while helping adult learners navigate basic coding exercises. Watching 40-year-old students struggle with concepts he could teach in his sleep, knowing he could revolutionize their entire program with the resources at his disposal, was almost unbearable. "You're really good at explaining this stuff," Sophia said as they cleaned up after a particularly successful workshop where Lucas had helped 3 students debug their first functional programs. "I know you said programming isn't exciting work for you, but you seem to come alive when you're teaching it." Lucas felt trapped by his own deception. Programming was exciting for him. It was his passion, his life's work, the foundation of everything he'd built. But he couldn't explain that without revealing who he really was. "I guess I like helping people understand it better than doing it for a living," he said lamely, hating how the lie diminished something he was genuinely passionate about. One evening, as Lucas tucked Emma into her bed in his actual home, a sprawling estate in the hills with panoramic views of the city, she asked the question he'd been dreading. "Daddy, why don't we tell Miss Sophia about our real house?" Lucas sat on the edge of her princess-themed bed, surrounded by the abundance that his success had made possible. Hand-painted murals on the walls, a ceiling that projected stars and constellations, shelves lined with more books and toys than most children saw in a lifetime. In the context of his deception, it all felt like evidence of his dishonesty. "It's complicated, sweetheart," he said, smoothing her curly hair away from her face. "But Miss Sophia is nice," Lily added from her matching bed across the room. "She brings us books and teaches us games and helps us with the monkey bars. I think she would like our real house too. She could see our playroom and the swimming pool and the tree house you built us." Lucas realized that his daughters, in their simple wisdom, had identified exactly what was wrong with his approach. Sophia had proven her character repeatedly over the past month. She'd shown kindness, generosity, patience, and genuine affection for both him and his children. She'd shared her own struggles and dreams with refreshing honesty. Continuing to lie to her was becoming a betrayal of the trust she'd shown them all. "Girls," he said carefully, "what if I told you that some people might act differently around Daddy if they knew about our big house and my important job?" Emma considered this with the seriousness she brought to all important questions. "You mean they might be fake nice instead of real nice?" "Something like that," Lucas confirmed. "But Miss Sophia is real nice," Lily insisted. "She was nice before she knew about anything. She was nice just because she liked us. And she paid for lunch that time when your wallet didn't work," Emma added helpfully. "That's what real friends do." Out of the mouths of babes, Lucas thought. His 4-year-old daughters had grasped something that his own fear and past disappointments had obscured. Sophia had already proven herself worthy of trust. She'd shown him her heart before she knew anything about his wealth, and everything about her character suggested that money would matter far less to her than the man she'd gotten to know. The next morning, Lucas made a decision that terrified and excited him in equal measure. He called Sophia and invited her to dinner, not at another modest restaurant, but at his actual home. He spent the day pacing his office, second-guessing himself, and drafting mental scripts for how to reveal his deception without losing the woman he'd fallen in love with. Mr. Bennett? His assistant, Janet, appeared in his office doorway with a concerned expression. You've been walking circles around your desk for 20 minutes. Is everything okay? Janet had worked for him for 5 years and had never seen him this agitated about anything, including hostile takeover attempts and congressional hearings about data privacy. I need to tell someone the truth about something, and I'm terrified it's going to ruin everything, Lucas said, finally sitting down in his leather executive chair. Must be someone pretty important, Janet observed. I've never seen you nervous about anything. She is, Lucas said simply. She's the most important thing that's happened to me since the girls were born, and I've been lying to her about who I am. Janet raised an eyebrow but didn't look particularly surprised. The woman you've been dating? The one you've been dressing down for? You noticed that? Mr. Bennett, you've been wearing the same 3 casual shirts for a month, and yesterday you asked me to research modest family restaurants instead of your usual 5-star establishments. Plus, you've been happier than I've seen you in years. It wasn't hard to figure out. Lucas laughed despite his nervousness. Am I that transparent? Only to someone who's watched you work 16-hour days and rarely smile for the past 5 years, Janet said gently. Sir, if this woman makes you happy, and if she's been spending time with Emma and Lily, then she's already seen the most important parts of who you are. Everything else is just details. That evening, Lucas waited by his front gate as Sophia's modest sedan pulled up to the imposing entrance of his estate. He'd spent an hour with Emma and Lily, explaining that tonight they would show Miss Sophia their real house and tell her the truth about Daddy's job. Both girls had been excited about finally being able to share their home, and their enthusiasm had helped calm some of his nerves. When Sophia stepped out of her car, Lucas was struck again by her natural beauty. She'd dressed nicely for what she thought was dinner at his apartment, a flowing blue dress that brought out her eyes and simple jewelry that suggested she'd made an effort without going overboard. Her expression shifted from confusion to understanding as she took in the mansion before her, the manicured grounds, and the obvious wealth that surrounded them. I have something important to tell you, Lucas said when Sophia reached the front door, his heart pounding with the magnitude of what he was about to reveal. You're not actually a struggling computer programmer, are you? Sophia asked quietly, her voice carefully neutral. I'm the CEO of Bennett Technologies, Lucas admitted, leading her into the elegant foyer with its marble floors and crystal chandelier. I founded the company 8 years ago, and it's now worth more than I ever dreamed possible. I lied because I wanted to know if you could care about me and the girls for who we are, not what we have. Sophia was quiet for a long moment, taking in the implications of his revelation, while her eyes swept over the obvious luxury that surrounded them. Lucas felt each second of silence like a physical weight, wondering if he'd just destroyed the best thing that had happened to him in years. Lucas, she said finally, I understand why you felt you needed to test me, but I have to ask, what made you think I would be interested in your money? Experience, Lucas said honestly, his voice heavy with the disappointment of past relationships. Too many women who lost interest the moment they realized that dating me meant sharing my time and attention with Emma and Lily. Too many others who only became interested once they learned about my wealth. I've been proposed to by women who barely knew my middle name but had researched my net worth online. And what did your test tell you about me? Sophia asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. That you're exactly the kind of woman I hoped you were, Lucas replied without hesitation. Someone who sees value in people rather than possessions. Someone who loves my daughters for themselves, not because they're part of a package deal with a wealthy man. Someone who would pay for lunch without thinking twice about what it cost, because she cared about the people she was with. Miss Sophia. Emma's voice echoed through the foyer as both girls came running down the grand staircase, still in their pajamas but too excited to wait for a more formal introduction to their real home. We can show you our playroom now, Lily added, grabbing Sophia's hand. And the swimming pool and the treehouse Daddy built? Lucas watched Sophia's face as his daughters enthusiastically pulled her toward the main living area, chattering about all the things they'd wanted to share with her for weeks. Her expression was thoughtful, processing not just the revelation of his wealth, but the obvious joy his daughters felt at finally being able to share their whole world with her. The house tour took over an hour, with Emma and Lily serving as enthusiastic guides who wanted to show Sophia everything from their elaborate playroom with its indoor climbing wall to the library where Lucas read to them every night. Sophia asked questions, admired their artwork displayed throughout the house, and seemed genuinely impressed by the treehouse Lucas had designed and built himself. "This is incredible," she said as they stood on the treehouse's deck, looking out over the city lights. "You built this yourself?" "Every board and nail," Lucas confirmed. "It took me 3 months of weekends, and I had to watch about 50 YouTube videos to figure out the engineering, but it was worth it to see their faces when it was finished." "It's not just a treehouse," Sophia observed, running her hand along the carefully sanded railing. "It's like a work of art. The attention to detail, the way it's integrated with the tree's natural growth pattern. You must have put incredible thought into this." Lucas felt a flush of pride. The treehouse was one of his favorite accomplishments, not because of its complexity, but because of what it represented. His commitment to giving his daughters not just financial security, but also the kind of magical childhood experiences money couldn't buy. After the girls were finally convinced to go to bed, a process that took longer than usual because of their excitement about showing Sophia their rooms, Lucas and Sophia sat on the terrace overlooking his infinity pool and the city beyond. "I need to apologize," Lucas said, accepting the glass of wine Sophia had poured from the bottle she'd brought as a hostess gift. "I know the deception was wrong, even if my motivations were protective." Sophia was quiet for a moment, swirling her wine thoughtfully. "Lucas, I fell for a single father who was working hard to provide for his children and who clearly adored them. Your bank account doesn't change any of that." "And the fact that I lied to you?" Lucas asked, needing to know if his deception had damaged something irreparable between them. "The fact that you were protecting your daughters from people who might not value them properly tells me you're a good father," Sophia said thoughtfully. "But Lucas, if we're going to build something real together, it has to be based on honesty from now on. Complete honesty. There's more I need to tell you," Lucas said, taking a deep breath. "Bennett Technologies has a foundation that focuses on digital equity and technology education. We've donated millions to organizations like Digital Bridge, and I personally mentor young programmers through several scholarship programs. When you were talking about your funding challenges, it was killing me not to be able to help immediately." Sophia stared at him for a long moment, and Lucas watched as the pieces clicked into place in her mind. "The Bennett Foundation," she said slowly. "We've applied for grants from them twice, but we were always told the funding had been allocated to other organizations. Because I wasn't on the selection committee for those decisions," Lucas said. "I delegate most of the foundation's day-to-day operations to avoid any appearance of favoritism or conflicts of interest. But Sophia, if you'd gotten those grants, I would have known who you were immediately. The foundation keeps detailed files on all applicants. So you could have figured out that I wasn't interested in your money even without the deception," Sophia said with a slight smile. "My financial disclosure forms would have shown I make $42,000 a year and drive a car that's older than some of your employees." Lucas laughed, feeling some of the tension leave his shoulders. "I never thought of that. I was so focused on protecting myself from fortune hunters that I didn't consider there might be other ways to verify someone's motivations. Can I ask you something?" Sophia said, settling back in her chair. "What happens now? I mean, this is all a lot to process. A month ago, I thought I was dating a single dad who worked in tech support. Now I find out you're one of the most successful black entrepreneurs in the country, and you live in a house that's probably worth more than my entire neighborhood." Lucas felt his stomach clench with anxiety. This was the moment of truth. Would the revelation of his wealth change how she saw him and their relationship? "I hope nothing has to change," he said carefully. "I mean, obviously I can't keep pretending to struggle financially, and I understand if you need time to process all of this. But Sophia, the man you've been getting to know for the past month, the one who makes silly voices for stuffed animals and burns pancakes on Sunday mornings and falls asleep during movies because he's exhausted from work and parenting, that's who I really am. The money and the big house are just circumstances of my professional success." "I believe that," Sophia said softly. "And I have to admit, there's something poetic about the fact that you've been testing me while I've been unknowingly proving myself. It's like the universe was ensuring we'd find each other for the right reasons." Relief flooded through Lucas like a physical release. "So you're not angry about the deception?" "I'm not thrilled about it," Sophia said honestly. "But I understand why you felt it was necessary. And Lucas, I've spent the past month watching you parent your daughters, seeing how you prioritize their needs over your own comfort, observing how you treat service workers and strangers. Those things tell me more about your character than your bank balance ever could." They talked until nearly midnight, with Lucas sharing stories about building his company, the challenges he'd faced as a young black entrepreneur, and his fears about raising daughters in a world that would judge them not just for their gender, but potentially for their race and their father's success. Sophia shared her own experiences with discrimination in nonprofit work, where her ideas were sometimes dismissed until a white colleague presented them, and her concerns about dating a man whose lifestyle was so different from her own. "I need to be honest about something too," Sophia said as they finally prepared to call it a night. "This level of wealth is intimidating to me. I grew up in a family where we celebrated when my dad got overtime pay, and my most expensive possession is my laptop. I'm worried about fitting into your world." "My world is Emma and Lily and Sunday morning pancakes and bedtime stories," Lucas said firmly. "Everything else is just background noise. And Sophia, I don't want you to fit into some artificial version of my life. I want you to be part of our real life. The one where the girls leave toys everywhere and I burn dinner half the time and we have dance parties in the kitchen while we clean up." "That sounds perfect," Sophia said with a smile that made Lucas's heart skip. "But I think I should probably start driving myself home instead of letting you call me a cab from that modest apartment you supposedly live in." Lucas laughed, remembering all the small deceptions he'd maintained over the past month. "Actually, I've been driving around the corner and waiting to make sure you got inside safely, then driving home to my actual house. My security team has been very confused by my new evening routine." "You have a security team?" Sophia asked, raising an eyebrow. "Unfortunately, yes. When you're worth a certain amount, personal security becomes necessary. But they're very discreet, and they've been briefed about respecting your privacy and maintaining appropriate boundaries if you decide to keep seeing me." The mention of security brought home the reality of what dating Lucas would mean, and Sophia was quiet for a moment as she processed this new layer of complexity. "This is all going to take some getting used to," she said finally. "We'll figure it out together," Lucas promised. "And Sophia, if you ever feel uncomfortable with any aspect of this lifestyle, please tell me. I'd rather scale back and keep you in my life than maintain appearances and lose you." Over the following weeks, they navigated the transition from Lucas's carefully constructed fiction to their new reality. Sophia met his security team, learned about the various safety protocols that governed his daily life, and gradually adjusted to the privileges and responsibilities that came with dating a high-profile CEO. Lucas, meanwhile, threw himself into supporting Sophia's work with a passion that had been suppressed during his month of deception. The first thing he did was arrange for the Bennett Foundation to provide Digital Bridge with a substantial grant, though he was careful to ensure the funding went through proper channels and was evaluated on its merits. When Sophia protested that she didn't want special treatment, Lucas pointed out that her organization genuinely deserved the support, and that denying them funding because of their relationship would be just as unfair as granting it inappropriately. "Besides," he said as they reviewed the grant paperwork together, "you applied for this funding before you even knew who I was. The only thing that's changed is that I'm now in a position to personally advocate for an organization I believe in." Lucas also began volunteering regularly at Digital Bridge workshops, though now he could use his full expertise to help students. Watching him work with adult learners, Sophia gained a new appreciation for his intelligence and passion. He had a gift for breaking down complex concepts into manageable steps, and his own experience as one of the few black students in his MIT computer science program gave him unique insight into the challenges faced by their underrepresented students. "You're completely different when you're teaching," Sophia observed after a particularly successful workshop where Lucas had helped a grandmother learn to build her first website. "Not different in personality, but you just come alive when you're sharing knowledge. This is why I started Bennett Technologies in the first place," Lucas said as they packed up the computer lab. "Not to get rich, but to create tools that could help people solve problems and build better lives. Somewhere along the way, I got caught up in the business side and forgot about the human impact. Working with your students has reminded me what it's all about." Their relationship also deepened in ways that had nothing to do with money or technology. Sophia became a regular presence at Sunday family dinners, where she fit seamlessly into the chaos of meal preparation with two energetic 4-year-olds. She brought a warmth and laughter to their home that had been missing since Lucas's mother died, and Emma and Lily clearly adored her. "Miss Sophia, will you braid my hair like yours?" Emma asked one morning as they prepared for a trip to the farmer's market. "Of course, sweetheart," Sophia replied, settling behind Emma with a brush and hair ties. "But we'll need to practice a few times to get it just right." Lucas watched from the kitchen as Sophia patiently worked with Emma's thick, curly hair, teaching her about different braiding techniques and promising to show her how to care for her natural texture as she got older. It was a conversation he'd been dreading having on his own, knowing that despite his best efforts, there were aspects of his daughter's experience as young black women that he couldn't fully understand or guide them through. Watching Sophia naturally step into that role filled him with gratitude and relief. 6 months after their first meeting, Lucas and Sophia announced their engagement at a Bennett Technologies charity gala, focused on providing technology education to underserved communities. The event, held in the ballroom of the city's most prestigious hotel, brought together tech industry leaders, nonprofit directors, and community activists in support of digital equity initiatives. 2 years ago, this foundation was just an idea, Lucas said as he addressed the crowd of supporters, his arm around Sophia's waist as she wore her grandmother's emerald engagement ring. Tonight, thanks to partnerships with organizations like Digital Bridge, we've trained over 10,000 people in technology skills and helped launch 500 new careers in our industry. But none of this work matters if we don't remember that technology is only as powerful as the communities it serves. From the audience, Emma and Lily watched with wide eyes as their father spoke to the crowd of elegantly dressed adults. Carmen had brought them to the gala as a special treat, and they were clearly overwhelmed by the magnitude of the event. "Is that really our daddy?" Lily whispered loudly enough to make nearby guests smile. "He looks so fancy," Emma added, clearly awed by seeing her father in his element as a business leader. Later, as the evening wound down and the girls played with other children in the hotel's elegant reception area, Lucas and Sophia found a quiet moment on the terrace overlooking the city. "You know," Sophia said as they watched Emma and Lily chase each other around the outdoor space, their fancy dresses already grass-stained from an impromptu game of tag. "I'm glad you tested me, even though I wish you hadn't felt it was necessary." "Why?" Lucas asked, though he suspected he knew her answer. "Because now you know that I fell in love with the man who reads bedtime stories and makes silly voices for stuffed animals and stays up all night when his daughters have the flu," Sophia replied, echoing words she'd spoken months earlier. "The CEO part is just what you do for work. The father part is who you really are." As they danced together while their daughters giggled and twirled nearby, Lucas reflected on how much his understanding of love and partnership had evolved. He'd learned that the most important test hadn't been whether Sophia would pay for lunch or overlook his fake financial struggles, but whether she would choose to love a ready-made family with all its complexities and responsibilities. She had passed that test every single day since they met, not through grand gestures or expensive gifts, but through the small moments that really mattered. Helping Lily tie her shoes, listening patiently to Emma's elaborate bedtime stories, bringing books instead of toys because she understood that imagination was more valuable than possessions, and seeing his daughters not as obstacles to their relationship, but as its greatest blessing. As the evening ended and they prepared to take the girls home, Lucas realized that his deception, while wrong, had ultimately led him to something more valuable than he'd ever imagined. A woman who loved him not despite his responsibilities, but because of them, who saw his success as an opportunity to help others rather than a lifestyle to exploit, and who understood that the most important thing he'd ever built wasn't his company, but his family. Standing in his foyer as Sophia helped the girls out of their party dresses and into comfortable pajamas, Lucas knew that he'd found something rare and precious, a partner who would help him raise his daughters to be strong, compassionate women who understood that privilege came with responsibility, and that true success was measured not in bank balances, but in the lives you touched and the love you shared. The story that had begun with a lie had become the foundation for the most honest relationship of his life, built on shared values, mutual respect, and the understanding that the best things in life, love, family, purpose, couldn't be bought or sold but only earned through the daily choice to show up authentically for the people who mattered most. "Daddy," Emma said sleepily as he carried her upstairs to bed, "I'm glad we don't have to pretend about our house anymore." "Me too, sweetheart," Lucas replied, meaning it completely. "No more pretending about anything." "Good," she murmured against his shoulder. "Miss Sophia likes us better when we're real anyway." Out of the mouths of babes, Lucas thought again, understanding finally that the love worth having was the kind that saw you clearly, wealth and poverty, success and failure, perfection and flaws, and chose you anyway. That was the gift Sophia had given him, and it was more valuable than any fortune he could ever accumulate.